And we're back for the top four of the spring season challenge number 9. We're going to be watching currently undefeated in the tournament ABoss with Praxis Mid. A little bit different than the structure that we saw from Paradox last round. And we're going to see them against johnkkez, who's playing Argenport control and is also a little bit different than the previous, tried and true at this point, I guess, Argenport control deck that has won the last two TNEs.
Yeah, this should be a pretty interesting match. I had the unfortunate task of playing ABoss earlier in this tournament on
Okay.
Argenport, and
Mhm.
he rolled me. Like, it was not close. So
Yeah.
I'm curious to see if John's changes, because John's playing more. He's playing Zito and Eavesdrop, so more hand disruption than
Mhm.
I was playing. I was playing the exact 75 that won the last two. So
Trying to
this should
make
be
it
a
a
great match.
three-peat. Oh, sorry. I was saying that you were trying to make it a three-peat for the deck list.
I really was. And my first two rounds, all I played was the exact same 75 list. I thought everyone was on it for a while.
Yeah, so I'm excited to see this match, and this is kind of a little bit before my time in Eternal History, but I believe John Cake has played in like the first World Championship, right? Like they're no slouch, and they definitely have some innovation here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm very curious to see how this goes. They're both great players, so anybody can take this down.
Great, so looks like ABoss is going first, which is definitely good for their Dinosaur Nest deck, which we see there. And then in terms of first hands, for John Cake has, I guess you technically can keep because you have two inscribed cards, but you kind of just have a pretty slow out of the gates hand, and with the free mulligan, it feels like it's hard to justify keeping that one, but I guess I could see it.
I can't imagine John keeps this. On the other hand, ABoss has a great start. Doesn't have a one drop, but the Dino Nest on two is really big game against Argenport.
Yeah, it's just allowed to apply so much pressure, and then kind of just single-handedly requires sweeper sometimes.
Yep. The only relic interaction that Kez has access to is Display of Will. So even if he does pull that off, it'll be pretty hard to cast before turn 4.
Right, and it's not even a one for one at that point.
Right. That's what makes the Dino Nest so strong is it gets that value. Also, the Exodus in hand um, adds a little extra power to those dinosaurs.
Mhm. I do like John Cake has keeping this second hand that has access to Lunar Claw. Lunar Claw is probably one of the better answers. Typically, if you're on the play against the dinosaur, like if you're on the play with Lunar Claw against a dinosaur nest, it's a little bit cleaner than the other way around, but it's still a good start.
Absolutely.
We're seeing a turn two Zeta, so it's one of those, oh, I wonder what you drew for the turn. But um, it still ends up being pretty good since ABoss's deck is a little bit bigger, requires cards in hand for cards like Aegis Lamentor. The Zeta is able to do a little bit of work, and even like stopping some damage here from the charge unit. I also like that you're able to kind of blunt the assault from a Praxis Duster that might come down. We see that in the hand, and if that was the turn 4 play, and you don't trade off. So that's actually an interesting decision point for ABoss here. Maybe you're actually allowed to attack, because unless if there's another Zito, you can start to try to chunk in with your Praxis Duster. But if you just wait, you're kind of just saying, okay, I'll just wait until the nest flips, and then I'll attack. Which I kind of like, but is still a tough decision.
I think the decision point that ABoss was looking at is, do I want to guarantee Phoenix on 5? And
Mhm.
that's why we see the Exodus get inscribed. Allows us to dust here if we wanted to, but because of the Zito, we're gonna hold it back. And I'm guessing we're just gonna kick the Waystone Infuser, Waystone Igniter. Sorry.
Mhm. It's kind of interesting. Maybe you're actually allowed to just make 2 units because you're going to play Phoenix next turn, and then do you really care about the one power? It's like, I don't know. I think it could go either way. I guess it's all the same in the end because they would just use the Groat to kill your 2/1, so you rather just have the 2/1 and play like this.
Yeah, I think I like killing the weapon.
Ooh,
All right, Dino
Flarn is a good
Nest
one.
still pumping out the dinosaurs, and then
Mhm.
Inferno Phoenix coming in hot.
Yeah, so what's really nice about Phoenix is, well, all of its abilities was the nice part about Phoenix, but uh, other than Sharp Tactician, if it's something like Nothing Remains, it really juices up the next cards in the deck. But as it stands here, it's actually kind of difficult from ABoss's side, trying to figure out how to make inroads on this board where there's just such chunky things on the ground.
Yeah, that Sharp Tactician going to an 8/8 silencing the Phoenix is huge. It's really difficult for the Praxis deck to get through a unit that size, and it's not getting any smaller.
Oh,
As we
interesting.
see the bank come down.
Yeah, so I thought we might instead see the Lunar Claw come down and just kill the 4/4, kind of like stymie the bleeding a lot sooner. But I think what johnkkez is kind of valuing here is just being able to keep the relic weapon around to start to just, okay, if I play the bank first, then it gets +2/+1, so then it's able to stick around after I kill the flying dinosaur. Then maybe I'm able to eke out a little bit more value from it there. I feel like if you're johnkkez, you're allowed to attack with this 10-9 sooner or later.
Yeah,
Oof.
he also has
The
the 3/2
Duster.
Minotaurs that demand to be blocked. So I would expect some sort of attack to come out here.
Yes, so I actually saw a punish for not choosing to use Lunar Claw. So if Claw was used, it would trade off with the Duster. And then the Garrote still could have killed the 4/4 next turn. But due to the way johnkkez chose to sequence into the Duster, ultimately was not able to kill anything for their troubles.
I think the Duster's a 6/6, isn't it? When it
Right, but
comes into play,
Lunar Claw with the bank would be 6.
only 5.
+2, +3, +1.
Oh, math is hard. Okay, you got me.
It's okay. We'll edit that one out of when this goes to YouTube. Uh,
Forgot about that. The extra +3 for the turn. Yeah,
yeah,
you're correct.
it's fine. But it is true that when you're playing these types of matches, it is important to look at the deck list. We do see a pretty important draw there. So a Garrote is able to come down from their point of view, but we know that there's actually a bullseye. Even though it's nerfed, it's able to still hit the hidden Garrote. And then
Yeah, and you were
ultimately
talking
actually do
about
nothing.
dealing with this flyer, and it looks like this flyer is going to take it all the way home for ABoss.
Right. So possibly could have sequenced a little bit differently on Kez's side, kind of losing a Garrote for little value. But it's kind of a tough decision. Maybe they felt like they just couldn't beat the Duster anyways and was playing around other things like, okay, if I'm able to use the Garrote to trade with your flyer, then I can play this Lunar Claw to try to lock out things in your hand. So it's kind of tough. Like we don't get to see into the players' minds, but just different lines, especially when you see open deck lists, are definitely a thing that can happen.
Absolutely. I find it's very difficult for the Argenport deck to play around Field Medic and Duster,
Mhm.
as well as the threat of Evelinas and Inferno Phoenixes. There's just so much charge and then, ambush that it's a tall order for the Argenport deck to kind of fight through.
Right, so it's kind of like what you're alluding to is that in the turn cycle. So say if you know that the Argenport deck has to play Nothing Remains. So it's like, fine, I'll just leave up my power. At the end of your turn, I'll play this ambush unit, then I'll play this charge unit, and you're just already back on the back foot. So just having that amount of flexibility. I feel like one thing that even though people play a lot of Eternal, there are a few interactions that don't happen as often as others, and I feel like the ambush being able to intercept the the relic weapon attacks is something that doesn't happen as often as a lot of other interactions.
Yeah, I also find it especially annoying that you can ambush an unblockable relic weapon. I do not understand that.
Well, you're not blocking it, you're ambushing it. It's not unambushable. Maybe that'll be a new mechanic one day.
If you're listening, Direwolf, I would very much like that. Unambushable.
Probably with a better name, like unsurprisable or something. So we see the turn two Dino Nest, which you kind of alluded to as being a very key component of this matchup.
Yep, ABoss is getting onto the board quickly, and we see johnkkez replying with call the hit just on one of the 1/1s just to slow down the aggression.
Yeah, I don't think johnkkez would have done that if they had telepathy and knew that, or not telepathy, like future sight or whatever, and knew that Saloon Massacre was on the top of their deck. But given the hand as it was, it does make a lot of sense to kind of just stymie the bleeding a little, and maybe we'll see another cool like sharp tacticianer play. ABoss, on the other hand, even though it's an aggressive deck, which tends to have less set synergies, by being an Ageless Mentor deck, you kind of have a little bit more rigid synergies that you need specific things to go well. And we actually see this kind of, I can't develop my Ageless Mentor because I really want the buff on my other units, which kind of provides some interesting tension.
Yeah, and yeah, that's true. Doesn't Exodus or Ageless Mentor just opts to pass the turn because he wants more value? Meanwhile, johnkkez is having a little bit of influence issues. I expect that we're going to inscribe the eavesdrop,
Hmm. And then I guess
but
you could go route if you want to.
yeah, probably Garrote to trade with the 4/3.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's a pretty good way to clean up the board. So the other thing you should do if you're on johnkkz's side is, what does my opponent have? They chose to do nothing on their, turn three or turn four, and it's like they do have a lot of things to do. They have, you know, Oni Insider, some Waystone Igniter, Endangered Kieran, Ageless Mentor, Field Medic, Praxis Duster. Like, there's a lot of things that could have happened last turn. So you actually want to kind of build a mental checklist of like, what are all the cards that could be in your hand, and you can map out the next turns.
Yep. Okay, so we see Saloon Massacre clear out the dinos, and this Ageless Mentor is just waiting for a friend.
Just kind of rotting in the hand. We might actually see, yeah, just like I'm willing to two for one myself, and then this black book is looking to push the game out of reach. It's not definitely not over yet. So one of the best parts about the Ageless Mentor is being able to buff a card like, Inferno Phoenix or Riva and just like really bring the pain.
Absolutely, yeah. Any of those 5 drops buffed by the Ageless Mentor is really terrifying.
So this plays pretty good. So you can also deduce that besides cards like Ageless Mentor and No Friends, that it's probably just some sort of suite of removal spells. But you want to play besides how debt works in this game, you want to play the Black Book first, because imagine if they only had one thing that would be discard to Black Book, and you made them discard first with Zeta, and then say played the Black Book later. Then like you might just not get anything. So you wanna do it this way. Um, but the game kind of forces you to do that anyways.
Yep, and johnkkez is fully in the driver's seat now. He has really dealt with ABoss's board consistently. He's at a pretty high life total, and he's working on those war cries. Something scary is coming.
Yeah, so
Interestingly, we see John just draw a card instead of deal with the Dino Nest. The
well,
Dino
so
Nest doesn't look like it's doing anything, but a lot of those 5 drops get that extra +2/+2, makes it a little more difficult to deal with.
so I think the reason why you're willing to display there is because you already have the War Cry 2 from the Black Book attack last turn. So if you're really just trying to bring along the pressure, you want to just dig towards the units and just say like, I want to just present lethal as quickly as possible.
That's true.
Like the one thing that happens with these Praxis decks, both Paradox and ABoss's version, is they don't play particularly well from behind.
Right, so
So
once you turn that corner, you really just have to
you can just
go
like
full
foot on the
throttle.
gas. Yeah.
Yep.
And if you give them too much time, then they could draw like a chain of flyers to be able to get out of the situation, and some of the flyers are able to dodge the display of will. Um,
All right, well, now this matchup is tied up 1 apiece. Who do we think is going to take this final game?
hmm, After watching it in action more, I do really like johnkkz's build, and they're able to get enough hands that if they're able to kind of deduce what's in ABoss's hand, I think they're able to sequence their spells correctly. But I think with the amount of charge units and ambush and Dino Nest, I could see it going to ABoss as well.
Yeah, I think if ABoss has that turn 2 nest,
Oh,
then
you mean that
and
one?
it looks like he does.
Yeah, so
So
all three games.
yeah, all three games turn 2 nest. I would expect that we're just not going to play the Waystone Igniter until turn 3.
Mhm.
Interesting to see if ABoss decides a different line. Yeah, he's
Ooh.
going Igniter on 1. So we're not going to see a turn 2 Dino Nest. It's going to wait till at least turn 3. He is going to get in a fair bit of damage with that 4-3.
Yeah, so what answers does johnkkz have here? So johnkkz notably is not playing Shrivel. So you know that if you do this play, it has to be hitting Garrote, and then you're dealing a lot more damage over the like short term if you do it this way.
Yep, and this Praxis charge deck is definitely all about the damage.
Oh, charge.
Uh,
You called it. So if you're
Sadly, ABoss really only has removal in hand. None of those threats that we were talking about.
right, yeah. So I was gonna ask if you're johnkkz if you just fire off the Saloon Massacre, and they said yes, and I think ultimately I like that decision because you're really trying to set up this Auric bank, and you rather not massacre after you bank. So still just kind of keep the board at some form of parity, and then this plays great. So what this is trying to do is trying to get a peek at the hand. It only gets punished by a card like Field Medic, which happens to be had there, but from your point of view, you're able to just lock down a ton of things. The fact that the bullseye wasn't played in response to the Lunar Claw kind of tips the hand a little that you have Field Medic. So I don't know if you're necessarily allowed to attack there if you're johnkkz, but I understand the reason why they did it.
Yeah, it's interesting because like if you don't attack and then he doesn't, I mean he's always gonna play the field medic though I guess. So
Right,
yeah,
but
maybe you're right. Maybe you should just not attack and try and keep the relic around for one more turn.
right, because if it's not a charge unit, then the Field Medic would just knock your Lunar Claw down to 1, and then you can kill the non-charged dinosaur. Okay. Kind of, edge of a knife here. Just
Yeah, wow. We're at 1, but we get the weapon, which brings us to 9.
yep. So I wonder if you off the Kieran and a 3/3. Just like playing around 5 drops. Because you know that the hand's a little bit clogged. Do you know that there's 2 Searing Fists and an unknown? Ultimately, just gonna get charged out of this game. It would have happened either way with the Battlefield Dasher, even if the Kieran were addressed. So ABoss ultimately taking it down. So, showing some of the power of the Dino Nest. But I think it's really the overall structure of this deck that allowed it to do that. Along with, of course, some, timely top decks. But that's just kind of how it goes in these sorts of games. But I really like the sequencing and the use of the tools that ABoss had access to.
Yeah, this Praxis deck has really impressed me. It's played some cards that I was not quite sure about, but the way that the turns go, it really lines up well with a lot of the things that the big players in this format are trying to do.
I think it also just lines
And
up. Oh, sorry, you go.
no, no, go ahead.
I think it also lines up really well with open deck lists. By playing so many things at fast speed with charge and ambush, it's like you can actually induce your opponent to play worse because they know what you're capable of, versus, oh, maybe they just don't have this in their list, so I'm just going to play like this other way, like on a day one sort of metagame in the open.
Interesting.
So it looks like the finals are already slated. So we already know one side is ABoss, currently undefeated in the tournament. So whether or not they win, they're going to take down a lot of points for the leaderboard, and they're going to be playing against Spifferific in the finals. So, two top tier players from both the TNE and the normal Direwolf Digital series. So I'll be excited to watch this match. But stay tuned, and we're going to be cutting to a quick commercial break.